ask a horse to turn right, there is a very real chance that it's not going to go right. Like, seriously, if the horse does all the work, if there's nothing the human does, if I'm not doing anything, why the fuck would you carry my body weight around? It just seems like dead weight. Like, seriously. So have you ever wondered with equestrian sports, like, if the horse does all the work? I mean, honestly, you're not the first person to wonder that. However, there's this thing called Instagram Threads now, and apparently it's a way for people to, I just actually made a post about this. I was like, is this X's second cousin once removed or twice removed, except it's the chatty one because you get more characters. So basically people kind of just post like random thoughts, and it's kind of fun to hang out in there because it's fun to see some casual conversation. And to be honest with you, one of the things I really like about it is that, you know, and maybe I'm about to make it more mainstream, you know, in the sense of if more people find out about it, but there's not a lot of hate on there. And so even if somebody says something controversial, which I've responded to a couple controversial statements, none of it's mean, right? But the one that we're responding to today, which for the record, I'm not doxing anybody. This is a public forum. And so I'm going to link this thread. So for all my equestrian friends out there that follow me on this channel, if you have a response to this, I'm going to read you my response. You can also go on there and respond yourself. Because I will show you, my equestrian folk showed out. Okay, so here is the original post, the original thread. Huge Olympics fan here. What's everyone's opinions on horseback competitions? My opinion is that it shouldn't be an Olympic sport. The horse is doing the work. Just saw a guy competed in the last 8 Olympics and he is in his 50s. Clearly the horse doing the work. Should we have frog jumps in the Olympics? If I could afford a $500,000 horse, if I could afford a $500,000 horse, I could compete. Sorry, I had to add that influx because it's a question, which definitely questionable. P.S. I don't think it's that easy to ride, just making a statement. An ill-informed statement, but a statement nonetheless. And so the first thing I did was I read everybody's comments because I was kind of like, whoa, man, like not only are you saying the horse is doing all the work, but you're also sitting there saying that you could just show up and do it. Like you would like, oh, I'm just going to buy a fancy horse and just show up. Like for me, that was the part that actually got me. Cause I was like, let's just play this out. So say the horse does do all the work, right? What's funny is he thinks he could just jump on a horse and just go do what people in the Olympics do. And I addressed that in my response. So here, we'll read my response and then we'll live react to it. But I was like, that's cute that you think you can just buy an expensive horse and just show up. I know from previous comments that we would all show up with popcorn to watch that. Like, cause seriously, anybody that thinks they can just show up and be an Olympic equestrian, like I would actually watch that, although we would need many ambulances on hand. We would need lots and lots of Band-Aids and all kinds of crap, like extra padding. Everybody would need to be bubble wrapped. But it would be really funny to watch because anybody thinking that it's not hard has never ridden a horse, which is also rings a lot in. We'll go through some of the other responses, but and then I'll link it so you can go look at all of them because they're funny. A lot of them are really funny. But for the rest of us, in reality, it takes years to become great at equestrian sports. And the reality is that not all horses, even the one you pay $500,000 for, can even attempt to compete at the top level. That's really true. Like, there's a lot of people that buy expensive horses that never make it to the Olympics. And the Olympics, for the record, in eventing is not the highest level of competition. So the highest level of competition is actually called a 5-star, and the Olympics is a 4-star. So it's not the highest level of competition. However, I have heard of free horses on Craigslist being, competing in a 5-star. So it's the expense of the horse is not the determining factor on success in the sport, because ultimately the price tag has nothing to do with the horse. Like, it maybe has a little bit to do with the horse's potential ability. However, there's a big gap between potential ability and willingness to do it, because I know riding my upper level horse that's doing intermediate, there's a certain level that you get to in any sport where the horse actually could just say, like, I don't want to do that. That is dangerous. Like, they will personally, the only reason those horses in the Olympics are doing any of that is because they want to, because that level of sport cannot be maintained by an athlete that doesn't want to do it. And there's going to be people who argue with me in the comments about that. However, my horse absolutely loves jumping. He loves jumping. If my horse wasn't doing what he loves to do, he would be just sitting rotting in a pasture somewhere anyway. Like, it's not like they get to be free, so why not give them a job that they love? And I've also sold a lot of horses, and one of the things that I take pride in when it comes to my horse sales is I make sure my horses end up in places that is truly what they want to do. For instance, if I have a horse that I've trained in eventing that doesn't actually like eventing, I am okay with selling them to a pure dressage rider. I am okay with selling them. I had one horse that I got off the track, and he kind of, he had a mental breakdown, let's say, and he's up in Oregon doing dressage he's up in Oregon living his best, relaxed life, doing dressage with 9-year-olds, teaching kids how to be, because as soon as he went into a competition environment, the horse fell to pieces. However, he wasn't an aggressive or mean, or he just wanted to be loved. And so I found him his best home. And so, but that's ultimately comes down to the rider. Being able to assess and understand what a horse is telling you. He was pretty obvious. He kind of literally tried to lay down in the dressage warm-up. He was like, I don't want to be here, and tried to lay down. So I was like, okay, you clearly really don't want to do this. But my horse that I compete right now, and this horse, he unfortunately died. But actually, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but there's a horse behind me, the picture. He also was... he loved his job. He didn't like other horses, but he loved his job. All right, last little bit. Also, this is my favorite part. Also, if the horse does all the work, why bother putting a rider on their back? Seems like avoidable dead weight if that was true. And honestly, that's my biggest comeback to everybody saying the horse does all the work. Like, seriously, if the horse does all the work, then why even bother putting a human on the horse's back? Like, seriously, if the horse does all the work, if there's nothing the human does, it just seems like dead weight. Like, seriously, if I'm not doing anything, why the fuck would you carry my body weight around? I weigh a lot. There's this whole, muscle weighs more than fat thing, but, I'm pretty solidly built because I was a gymnast before I rode horses. And for the record, gymnasts are really strong, and we do weigh a lot, and it's definitely an asset when it comes to riding horses, because I would say any rider that wants to get better at riding horses, especially if you're a cross-country rider, do balance beam. Because the amount of, for instance, when it comes to riding, there's a lot of pulling yourself back to center, and when it comes to balance beam, there's a lot of holding your core tight, and if you get off balance, having to pull yourself back to center, or you fall off. And so it's a very easy way for all eventers, specifically cross-country riders, to get that kind of center of gravity practice in that doesn't involve, thousands and thousands of cross-country jumps. So it's a very natural way to practice, you're practicing your equilibrium. But let's look at some of the other responses. I had a lot of fun reading these, and then obviously inspiring my own response along the way. Perhaps skateboarding or any other sport that doesn't involve a 1,200 to 3,000 pound animal that has a mind of its own and is unpredictable shouldn't be in the Olympics. Then I'm an equestrian for my whole life and grew up in my family involved with horses as well. Being an equestrian takes the same amount of time and effort, just like any other sport, if not more. I'm going to say the if not more part, because not only do you have to practice your sport, then it comes to taking care of a live animal that requires just as much care as, for instance, you. Dentistry, shoes, laundry, showering, all the things that humans have to do to care about themselves, you have to do that for your horse too. So it's practice in addition to the fact that you're actually caring for a live animal. The horse does not do all the work whatsoever. you've just never been a part of the sport to know what truly goes into the sport. That was very clear from the original post, that this person's never ridden a horse because they assume they could just buy an expensive one and be successful. In skateboarding, the board's doing all the work. In cycling, the bike is doing all the work. In beach volleyball, the ball is doing all the work. That's kind of that was a lot in the comments, and there was a lot of comments about the shooting guy, because it was like, okay, well, we should take away his gold medal because the gun clearly did all the work. But it's kind of that's where it's just a silly argument, because it's like, okay, for anyone thinking that there's no outside effort besides, just the person who shows up to do the thing, like, because a skateboarder can't actually be successful without their skateboard. A cycler can't actually be successful without their bicycle. But at the end of the day, it's just a piece of the puzzle. And so for anyone to think like, oh, with equestrian sports, we could just take the rider out and it would totally be fine, like, doesn't understand how the puzzle works. That was a theme as we go down. Equestrian sports are always a partnership between the horse and rider. The difference between horses, bikes, balls, boards is the horse has a mind of its own and is a genuine partner that's both a benefit and a challenge. I say that all the time. Like, people say, oh, it's like riding a bike or riding a motorcycle. And I'm like, yeah, except when you ask a motorcycle to turn right, it just turns right. Like, when you ask a horse to turn right, there is a very real chance that it's not going to go right. It's way more athletic than some other competitions like shooting. It's a physical skill and absolutely belongs as far as difficulty is concerned. The animal welfare is way more of a concern to me than it is a sport, because yeah, sure, the horse does the majority of the physical work, but the rider does a hell of a lot too. And it isn't the same as running a marathon, but you do need to be fit. Okay, so for one, yeah, the welfare of the horse is 100% the most important thing. However, any equestrian worth their salt that makes it far in this sport, the horse is actually the most important thing, because you can't get there without the horse. So if you don't take care of the horse, you don't actually make it to the top level of the sport. And there are, of course, horrible horse people. There are also horrible skateboarders, horrible gun owners, horrible marketers, horrible politicians, horrible, insert the blank here. So the fact that there is bad apples in every area of the world does not mean that the vast majority of us don't actually put our horse's health like above ours. Like, my horse goes to the dentist twice as much as I do. So for anyone thinking like, oh, the horse's welfare is not the most important thing to riders, they don't understand that the horse is the most essential piece of the puzzle. So you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that horse has its best chance at success. So that's the only thing there where it's like, well, all the horses would be dead if we didn't actually take care of them. Like, living things, if you don't take care of them, they die. So, and sometimes they die on accident, because that one cut his leg off, but I didn't do it. He did it. The horse does the majority of the physical work. Now, that's a little bit debatable, because it does take physical work to ride a horse, especially mine that's like really bouncy, and so hanging on to him and his bounce is really hard. And no, it is not the same as running a marathon, because marathons are boring. If tragically an equestrian's horse is injured shortly before the Olympics, both have to withdraw from the games. The rider can't just pick another horse the way a runner can just pick out a new pair of shoes. It takes years of training together for a horse and rider to achieve that level of talent. And I think that was one of the main things that everybody pulled out of this person's post, because they were just like, so I could just buy an expensive horse, show up, and be successful. And that's so fundamentally flawed, because no. And also, it gives so much more credence to the horse than to the rider, when really it's about the partnership of how those two work together to, I'm going to say solve problems, but ultimately, confronted with the question at hand, because dressage people are answering different questions than eventers, and same with stadium jumpers. Everybody's answering a different question. As an equestrian, I can promise you the horse is not doing all of the work, and if it is, I can almost guarantee you are on a bomb-proof horse who has had a large amount of training put into it. During COVID, I gained a lot of weight and had a hard time losing it because I wasn't able to exercise the way I could before. Over the last 4 years, I've managed to shed off all the weight, and then some by getting back into riding. The goal is to make it look like the horse is doing all the work. That is the funniest part, right? So Like I said, I used to be a gymnast, so I follow gymnastics just as closely as I follow horses. But like Simone Biles, right? Everybody always, there was this hilarious interview that somebody was asking other gymnasts, like, why they don't do the skills that Simone does. Because the thing about Simone is doing the hardest skills in the world, and she is doing them, making them look easy. And there's this other element that nobody else in the world is even trying to do those skills, right? Like, so there's this like kind of like people just see like question marks when that happens, because they're just kind of like, wait, what? Like that doesn't make any sense. So there's this video where this person's asking all these elite gymnasts, like, why don't you do the skills Simone does? And they're all just like, because they're hard, like because they're hard and she's crazy, like. And so it was actually the funniest thing I've ever seen, because I was like the fact that somebody was asking that question like shows how little that person knew. But the whole point of what makes Simone Biles so spectacular is because she does the hardest stuff in the world and makes it look easy. She makes it look like anybody could do it, when in reality, when you ask the other people in the world doing it, hey, do you want to do that? They're like, no, that girl is nuts. So it's like when it comes to riding horses, there's an element to that where the whole point of riding the horse, what you're doing, is to make it look easy. Now, I'm going to put a caveat in there for cross country, because you always got to plan for the unexpected in that category. But for dressage, it's all about making it look like you're not doing anything. So if it looks like the riders aren't doing anything, mission accomplished. Why is this a thing? Y'all just pick a topic and bitching on it on threads. LOL, sailing shouldn't be an Olympic sport since the boat does all the work. I don't know if y'all have seen a video on sailing recently, but that is funny. Dude, you have to like honestly, okay, I'm not gonna show it. All I'm gonna say is all I'm going to say is that watching people do sailing could double as some sort of porno audition, or like you could be a sailor / OnlyFans person and use your sailing video as your reel. Oh, it's so funny. Anyway, sorry to throw shade at sailors, but you do you. But yeah, so the boat does all the work. It does, clearly. Dude, watch it. It's so funny. Wow, I suggest you not watch the equestrian events then. If you can't see the beauty and athleticism, it is clearly not for you. Equestrian events and gymnastics are the only parts of the Olympics that I care about. My past life and my current life. I like it. You and I have very similar taste. Was about to come to the comments and go off, but y'all have it handled. I'm going to zoom through the rest of them after we get to a certain point, but if you want to read all the responses, they're so funny. Your statement is incorrect. Riding horses is a skill. There is a 50-year-old silver medalist from shooting. Should we remove them too, as the guns are doing all the work? Whoever said that the horse does all the work clearly never sat on a horse. That was made very clear from the original comment. No horse would be able to jump these jumps with an unexperienced rider as the rider and never be able to stay on the horse. Even jumping smaller jumps is really exhausting. However, we try to make it look easy. And when people cannot see all of the aids the rider uses to communicate with the horse. So riding is its own language. And for those of you that follow this channel because you're riders and you found me because I was helping you with the Equiband, or you found one of my fun horse hacks in terms of tack or anything like that, there's a lot that goes into riding. And one of the main things is that riding is its own language. The same way that you learn Spanish, Greek, French, English, like riding is its own language. And the trick with riding is that there's no words. I mean, you can say words to your horse, but the horse can't say words back. They can definitely say things back to you. Don't get me wrong. Horses communicate just as much as humans do, but they can't say words. They don't know. They have their own language. And so part of riding is learning horse language, learning how to speak horse language. And that's when you transition from being a rider to being a trainer, because then what happens is you learn the language, and when you ride a horse that doesn't know the language, you can then help them along learning this language. And so it is its own language. It's its own thing that you would have to learn. Ultimately, it takes years and years and years to develop this as a talent, because there is no guidebook. You have to do it through feeling a horse and feeling that conversation so many times that it becomes recognizable to you, the same way that if somebody was speaking French next to me, I'd be like, oh, French. I mean, I wouldn't be able to respond, but I would know it was French. The rolling eyes emoji, I felt that way when I read this. I mean this in the most respectful way possible. You think the horse does all the work because you have never ridden at that level before. So you literally do not have any experience or knowledge based on your opinion. And that's the definition of ignorance. An equestrian's heart rate reaches 200 beats per minute during a ride. That is comparable to a runner's heart rate. As someone who has played volleyball, soccer, and who rides horses, I can tell you that riding is the most physically challenging of the three. I love that. That's actually a very interesting take, and I don't want to sit here and debate like what sport is harder. Every sport is hard in its own way. I did gymnastics and I did horses, and I would say they are very different in, what's funny is my sister used to ride, and she was always very timid and afraid of cross-country riding. And I had always said that, because gymnastics is a sport of fear, because you're being asked to do things that fundamentally go against, like, I'm going to say nature. Like, somebody's like, oh, go jump up on that. Like, seriously. Okay, so let's put gymnastics in real life. So go up on that second-story building and then just flip off it. Everyone's like, well, if I do that, I might die. And in gymnastics, they're like, do it anyway. Yes, there are mats. Yes, there are this. Yes, there are that. But that's why the sport is so challenging, because you have to mentally get over the question that you're being asked in order to get to the next skill, to get to the next level. And so I always used to say that. But as I've gotten older, every single sport could have its own book written on it, because there's a lot of nuance to every single sport and challenge to every single sport. And comparing them is, a little bit, comparing horse riding, I can see it, but, comparing volleyball to soccer, one uses your hands and one uses your feet. What are you going to do? Like, how are you, are we going to say one group is not athletic? Like, would they be able to switch places? No, I think they would all have a hard time with that. And zoom, because I scrolled all the way to the bottom just to show you how many, and I gotta say, I am so proud of my equestrians who showed out. And I read them all, but there was not one person who actually agreed with this person. And so and I'm sure there are people in the world that agree with this person, but I was really, hey, shout out to my equestrian friends who told this guy that he was nuts, because let's just say that the horse does not do all the work. And if the horse did do all the work, then why the F would he be carrying me around? That just seems like stupid. And also, I will also add that when I do fall off, my horse usually looks at me like, dude, what are you doing down there? What? Like, because he doesn't like run away. He'll just stand there and like look at me like, It reminds me, actually, there was this one time I fell off. We were almost home, and I fell off, and we had to walk home, because when you fall off in eventing on cross country, you can't get back on and keep going. You're done. You're eliminated. And I fall off, right, and he's just looking at me like, dude, what are you doing down there? And we had to walk home. It's a very long walk because we were all the way in the backfield. And there were horses passing us because they were finishing their course, and he was like jumping up, and he was like, there's more, like he was kind of pissed. He was like, why are we walking? Well, there's more to do. It was hilarious. But to those out there also thinking that the horses don't enjoy what they're doing, there's a certain level in any sport, but especially equestrian, where if your horse doesn't want to do it, the horse won't do it. Like, seriously, because especially in eventing with cross country, the questions become too dangerous for a horse just to do it just for the heck of it. They have to want to do it just as much as you do, because otherwise, I promise you, the horse not only can't do it, but won't do it. I've even known horses that were capable of doing it, like they were physically capable of jumping that size, but they ultimately just didn't want to at the end of the day. So they didn't. Like, they were just like, I don't want to do that. And when it comes to riding horses, it's a lot easier to ride a horse that wants to do it than one that doesn't want to do it. So I can promise you, all the people out there that think that, oh, these horses don't want to do it, I don't know. I think that you don't know enough horses to be able to say that definitively, because my horse loves his job. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and check out this link there, everywhere. A link to the thread is down below, but also my next reaction video will be linked up above. I've reacted to Snoop at the Olympics. Love Snoop. And, you know, a couple other fun things where adventures are totally called crazy and all kinds of fun stuff. So check out the links, and I'll see you on the next one.
Deixa sua bunda ardendo. Deixa sua bunda ardendo. Toma sua safada, fica sua safada.